A very good evening to you, members of the media, members of the cabinet. Thank you very much for coming out. Members of the listening and viewing public, I am happy for your attention. We have just returned from a fairly grueling trip to London and Ghana, and I will take the opportunity to bring you up to date on some of the things that we encountered and we were engaged in, and also to respond to one or two of the issues which we are inundated by here in Trinidad and Tobago. I must let you know that even though I was away, I have been in constant contact and communication with most of the matters of interest. So I will speak to you about one or two of those things, and I will take a few questions from you after. As you may recall, I left here last Sunday, and we arrived in London on Monday. I took with me on the first leg of the journey the Minister of Energy, the Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, Minister Young, and also Minister Clay Hunt of Public Utilities. And the main reason for that category of persons in the trip is that those are the issues that were in front of us as we went forward. We met with BP on Tuesday, and we had a very, very important and successful meeting with BP, where a number of issues which required attention at the very top of the company were addressed, because we were addressing some of those issues here in Trinidad, but the decision making in these situations are usually facilitated and accelerated when the cases are dealt with at the top. BP has just moved into new leadership. There have been some significant changes at the top in BP, and we met with the top two persons in BP and others last Tuesday. One of the main issues that we got a door open to, and for which there would be significant follow-up in the coming weeks, is the whole question of the international marketplace, which has been very volatile in recent months. And Trinidad and Tobago, as a producer of products based on natural gas, and those products in the marketplace facing all kinds of competition and discounting and whatever, we had to ask our largest producer of gas to get on board with us in ensuring that the manufacturing side of Trinidad and Tobago's business, in which they too have an interest, and in which we as a country have a great interest, that we ensure that whatever is happening in the international marketplace, that we will respond in such a way that we would preserve our presence as a producer and exporter of the products which are based on the supply of natural gas in Trinidad and Tobago. And we have agreed to discuss in short order the pricing regimes that exist at the downstream and the upstream level in Trinidad and Tobago. And BP has agreed to send its team to Trinidad, and we have our team here. And we would expect some significant progress in that area. We also discussed the matter of BP's contracts. BP has a series of contracts for acreage in Trinidad and Tobago, which they are anticipating extension on, and we have agreed on working with those in short order. So we did a fair amount of discussion and got positive responses from BP with respect to our revenue side of things, because we have been in these discussions with BP for about 2 years, and step by step we have been able to make some progress in many of the areas, and sometime later in a different forum we'll give you the actual details of exactly what we were able to accomplish and what we are trying to accomplish. So today I just want to mention that we have agreement for some review of our marketing and pricing arrangements with BP. And however, one of the things that was put to us on Tuesday at BP was the whole question of the cash availability in these companies that are investing. BP has been investing very heavily in Trinidad and Tobago, as you know. Subsequent to the price agreement we got 2 years ago, BP has been investing in the order of about $5 billion here in Trinidad, and so is Shell and EOG. So there's a significant amount of investment taking place now in Trinidad and Tobago from the oil companies in the search for gas and, to a lesser extent, oil. BHP has just sanctioned and is about to drill on the Ruby field. We have some more drilling ships coming in. The Invictus is due here in a matter of a few weeks to continue the BHP deep water drilling and so on. So there's a lot of activity here. But there's a lot of pressure in the banking community to stop funding hydrocarbon exploration in the way that we expect it to be funded if we as a country are to benefit. So that was in front of us. And on Tuesday, BP was telling us about the cash situation in a company like BP. And then by the time I got back to London on Monday, the reports were in with respect to the carnage that took place on the stock exchange, or the stock exchanges of the world, New York, London, Tokyo. And the companies that took the biggest hit are the big oil companies. And you would have seen the share value has been hemorrhaged in numbers too big to swallow. The numbers are mind-boggling, losses of trillions of dollars. The BP, I think, suffered some of the biggest losses, a 20% decline in its share value. The oil companies in general suffered about an 18% decline in record losses on the stock exchange. And all of this happened between Tuesday, when we thought we had a good position going forward, and we left meetings with BP expecting that we were trusting that these situations don't last too long and that the effects are not as drastic as they appear in the first instance, because we also have, which would have triggered it, coming out of left field, which nobody anticipated, this whole question of the battle between the Russians and the Saudis, which resulted in a policy position of lowering oil prices in an attempt to force some producers out of the market. Interestingly enough, the targeted producers are the American competitors who are producing today. The United States is the largest oil producer in the world, producing over 13 million barrels a day. And the others can't agree as to how to deal with that. Normally what we'd have is an OPEC agreement supported by Russia to do a volume reduction, because the market is oversupplied. So the main producers would agree to reduce production. On this occasion, surprisingly, there was no agreement to reduce the volume so as to stabilize the price. And the opposite happened, where the Saudis have decided to increase production and to give a $4 discount. So it's an increase, which means you further saturate the market and you sell by discounting the price to the buyers. So the oil market right now is in turmoil, and there's the potential for a lowering of the price. And we would have budgeted here in Trinidad and Tobago oil at $60, and we did get that for the first part of the fiscal year, first 4 months of the fiscal year. But out of nowhere comes the prospect of sub $30 oil. Today the price is what, $31, something like that, for Brent. So West Texas is going to be lower than that, and we are benchmarked against West Texas. So we are in a very difficult situation with respect to the products that supply the bulk of our revenue. Gas is well under $2. I think today is 160 odd, something like that. We budgeted gas at 325. So the people of Trinidad and Tobago, we have to understand that there are things that we have no control over, but we are in a place where all of these developments are likely to have serious consequences for us. And we will get out of it as we can and as we've done before, not by shouting at one another, but exactly by how we behave as a responsible country. There is a requirement for us to be responsible in this period of difficulty. We have no control over gas price, over oil price. We are not in a position to influence those prices, but we are dependent on what happens in the marketplace. So we have to be cognizant of what is happening in the marketplace. And for those who we are interacting with, like the companies that operate in Trinidad and Tobago, we are required to be in a position to work with them, to talk to them, and at every occasion, in every situation, to put the interests of the people of Trinidad and Tobago first, and to build relationships so that all of us who are involved in the business, the shareholders of the oil companies and the shareholders of the people, of the owners of the resource in Trinidad and Tobago, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, to ensure that we are not disadvantaged, but and we are also aware of our circumstance, because it's a revenue situation for us, because we have been struggling since 2014 on the revenue side, because you may recall that there was an issue in 2014 which resulted in a collapse of oil price then, and we had not made the kinds of adjustment then. This government had to, for its entire term, be making adjustments downwards because there is a big gap between revenue and expenditure. We've done so largely by finding additional sources of revenue and also borrowing to maintain our development program and other kinds of expenditure. And that has been a very delicate assignment, which has been made even more difficult now by the kinds of developments in the marketplace. And of course, another area which is of great concern to us and which would have contributed to some of what is happening in the marketplace now is the whole question of this global epidemic of the coronavirus. When I spoke to you last in the presence of the Minister of Health and the technicians and the Ministry of Health, we put a team in place in the country to oversee our response, to prepare for any eventuality that may come our way. And I did tell you at the time that we were not only dealing with a health challenge and a threat, but that it posed serious economic challenges for us. And in a matter of a fortnight, that has come to pass, that the economic challenges that the world's economies are facing, and we too are caught up in that. Because if you follow the behavior of the marketplace with respect to bonds and stocks and so on, the uncertainty which markets hate, the uncertainty is there, and that the virus, the absence of knowledge and control and containment of the virus, that uncertainty has driven, one can say, panic in the international marketplace, with all kinds of consequences to which we are not immune. And this is what I was alluding to when I stated the last time that we are in a place where our economic concern is as great as our health challenges posed to us by this virus. So far, notwithstanding the daily misinformation that some people seem to enjoy by putting out in Trinidad and Tobago that we have cases here, there, and everywhere, and some people go as far as to indicate that the government is hiding the facts, I want to tell you, without fear of contradiction, that this government has been proactive, upfront, and extremely transparent in letting you know our response to this virus. But as you would have seen, if you look at the world map and the constant news, you would have seen that the containment in many countries has not been successful. And between last week and today, some of our Caribbean neighbors are reporting first instances. We are doing what we can, and all that is recommended and recommendable, because we don't want to panic the country or react out of panic, but we want to be responsible and careful, and we've done that. And so far, we have not experienced any confirmation of the virus in Trinidad and Tobago. For how long, we don't know, but we anticipate that it is still quite possible and even likely that we too will end up having to treat with instances of the virus in our community, and we are trusting that what we have put in place and what we are going to do and how we are going to respond will be sufficient to give us a position where it would not be catastrophic. Before I left here, the cabinet had taken a decision in the protocols that we were following to identify some countries as areas from which travelers coming to Trinidad and Tobago would be treated in a particular way. And given the explosion of the virus in some other countries, I speak here specifically about Germany, Spain, and France, I expect that the Minister of Health, in consultation with the Minister of National Security and myself, as was told to you recently, the Minister of Health will take the necessary steps to add those 3 countries to the list of locations from which travelers coming to us would fall into the protocol as existed for Italy, Iran, Korea, and Japan. And the experts are saying that this thing might peak probably in May, and that is based on some kind of understanding of the biology of the virus, which is still open to some interpretation, and we have to experience it for the analysis to be done. And of course, there's no vaccine that will be available in that period. So we have to just batten down our hatches, maintain our surveillance, and more importantly, in the event that the virus comes into the country, that we treat with it in a very responsible way. So what is being asked of us in Trinidad and Tobago today is to be responsible with our economy, with our revenues, with our expenditure, with our business in the oil and gas in particular, so that we can continue to work towards the benefits that we wanted to get, not take ourselves out of the positive side of what, and also not pretend that we are in a place that does not cause us to have concerns. And we need to look at the international marketplace and see what's happening to other people to get a clear view as to what could happen to us if we find ourselves in that situation. In the case of the United Kingdom and the United States, where there are issues of possible major disruption in their economic performance, I think today the British government was supposed to put out a statement today, or today's budget day. There's a budget coming in the UK, and in that budget, it's anticipated as part of government policy that government will provide elements of financial support and subsidies to persons who are affected. And in the United States, it's a question of if people are knocked down by the flu in any major way, and they will get a period of support from the government. I want us to understand that we in Trinidad and Tobago can't just assume that we can adopt those policies. One, we do not have the financial resources available as the UK has, or Australia or so, where they're running surplus budgets. Even if we are to provide some assistance, it will not be on the kind of scale that they are promising, because they do have a larger pool of cash reserves available to do that. And in America, unlike Trinidad and Tobago, where in Trinidad and Tobago, if you're employed and you're sick, all government employees and most private sector employees, you get sick pay. You get paid for being absent while you're ill. So it's not so in the United States. You don't go to work, you don't get paid. That's why they are talking now about if you have to stay home, you will be expecting to get some kind of help. Otherwise, you go straight to penury. So they're not identical situations, but we are anticipating that we would not find ourselves in that situation, but we don't know. And that's why we are ensuring that we follow the protocols up front as far as we are able to prevent ourselves from being affected by importing the virus in the way that it has happened in other countries. But we do not know where and when it may penetrate our fences, so we just have to be daily or hourly working in anticipation. There's something else that, and that was from the English side. Our trip to Ghana was extremely hectic, and we were very well received. I had the opportunity, I was invited by the President of Ghana to be the guest of honor at the Ghanaian Independence, 63rd Independence, which took place last Friday. And I am told by them that I am the first non-African leader to have had the opportunity to be the guest of honor at the Independence. And I think one did well for Trinidad and Tobago to be afforded that recognition and that honor. It also allowed us to be in interaction with a large population that is eager to do business with Trinidad and Tobago. The population of Ghana is 30 million. And the Ghanaians are eager to do business in the areas where we have commonality of purpose. You may recall that Prime Minister Manning had started an initiative at a time, I think it was prior to 2010. It was in 2008 or 2007 I think it was, an African Energy Initiative it was called, where Trinidad and Tobago, with its long experience in oil and its unique experience in managing gas and monetizing gas, was of great interest to the African countries, many of whom were at the stage of exploring for hydrocarbons and were successful. In East Africa, you've had successes particularly in Mozambique and in Uganda, and exploration in Kenya, and of course in West Africa you had successes in Ghana, Equatorial Guinea, and of course Nigeria has been a big producer all along. We started out wanting to invest at the invitation and in wanting to expand our economy by investing in an area, in a geographical area, in a business in which we had the expertise, had the experience and the personnel and the desire to invest. And the Ghanaians wanted to give us the opportunity to get involved with them as they started producing. Unfortunately, the enthusiasm of the Manning administration was not shared by others. And that's a story for another time. But in 2010, Ghana became a producer of oil and gas. And that happened to have been the time when the government changed in Trinidad and Tobago. And notwithstanding all the efforts we've made so far, we lost some ground, and an air of uncertainty existed between the Trinidad and Tobago interests and the Ghanaian interests. What we have been able to do on this trip is to meet with the government of Ghana, from the president to the respective ministers, and to have mutual agreement. There's an agreement, and the enthusiasm is there, to remove from our effort the uncertainty as to who's going to do what. And we have agreed that between now and July 1st, all that has to be done will be done at both ends to bring us to a position where Ghana will allow Trinidad and Tobago, by particular purpose, to be involved in its gas business, its gas expansion business, its gas processing business, its gas pipeline business. And this provides an extremely useful opportunity for Trinidad and Tobago to invest. And very importantly, Trinidad and Tobago already is investing in Ghana to the benefit of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Republic Bank is now a major beacon of ours in that market of 30 million people, with a business plan that does not confine itself to Ghana, but to the surrounding countries, for which Ghana is a gateway. So we have serious opportunities to do serious business in a serious place for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And in the, some documentation would be exchanged coming from Ghana in the next, before the end of this month, for which we'll respond by a particular date, and those correspondence and those documents should take us to a point of contracting by July 1st, which would put, whether it is the NGC or Phoenix Park gas processors, in a situation where there's no uncertainty as to our involvement in this area of business. Unfortunately for us in Trinidad and Tobago, we do not have in our pockets the revenue that was required for these kinds of investments. This was the kitty of the NGC, and you know what happened to that. But that should not prevent us from finding other avenues to take the opportunities that have been made available to us. And we expect that the interest that the Ghanaians are showing in us and that we are showing in their economy would redound to the benefit of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. One of the reasons why we have not been able to capitalize on the potential between the two economies is the absence of air transport. And what we have done on this trip, at the urgings of Trinidad and Tobago and the Ministry of Transport in Ghana, we have signed an MOU on Sunday last for Trinidad and Tobago and Ghana to establish a mutual air services agreement that will open the door for some possibility of air transport between Trinidad and Tobago and Accra, Ghana, and that routeway where we can link this part of the world with that part of the world would allow us to more easily and more effectively carry out the kinds of things that we think will benefit us on the way. So that is that agreement. The MOU has been signed. The actual agreement itself would be finalized and executed after it is cleared by the Attorney General and the Cabinet. And we saw and anticipate a great interest from, we spent a significant amount of time with the people in central Ghana. The cousins of Minister Lee Hunt has been there, living in the area. And we are anticipating that following this trip, there will be a lot of useful and useful developments from all areas. One of the areas which we're acting on already is the area of agricultural support for Trinidad and Tobago in its production side. Dr. John Allen was part of our delegation. He has remained in Ghana in furtherance of this. He's with the Ministry of Agriculture there, aiming to source a supply of planting material for our farmers in Trinidad and Tobago who are required to improve our production of certain kinds of food crops. And we want to maintain that arrangement, and they have offered to provide us with all the support that we need to refurbish what we have lost in terms of food production, ground provisions, and certain kinds of tree crops. One point I want to raise while I was away there are some people in Trinidad and Tobago who believe that their fortunes in this country can only be advanced in crises and negativity. I want this evening to tell the opposition leader of Trinidad and Tobago that if she does not wish this country well, it's quite all right to disappear, stay home in her house and enjoy what she is to enjoy, and leave the people of Trinidad and Tobago to struggle and prosper. When I became Prime Minister of this country, you members of the media and citizens would remember, one of the first assignments I had to deal with was to go to Jamaica in person with a delegation. I took a delegation with me, and in that delegation was MP Prakash Ramadar from the opposition. And the reason why I had to go to Jamaica on that occasion was because of the behavior of the outgoing government led by the Prime Minister, who had taken positions that were offensive to the people of Jamaica. And what the Jamaicans did in response was to organize themselves to boycott Trinidad and Tobago's produce. Trinidad and Tobago, our manufacturers and employees who work in factories in Trinidad and Tobago are dependent on those produce and those products ending up on grocery shelves and elsewhere in Jamaica. Jamaicans had organized themselves to boycott Trinidad and Tobago because they were unhappy with the way they were being portrayed and treated in Trinidad and Tobago at the official level. Fortunately, when I got to Jamaica, I had to sit with my small delegation in front of, I think there were 12 or 14 Jamaican ministers, and literally walk through and talk through and reason with them to withdraw from this position. And after that, meet with the private sector of Jamaica, because it was a private sector-driven boycott, to assuage them and to encourage them not to go down that road against the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Fortunately for us, many of those persons on that table in the Jamaican government were people I knew. I met many of them when I was minister in the Manning government before, and some of them I knew from the campus in Jamaica where I studied. And a sense of camaraderie was rekindled, and we have maintained very good relations since then, notwithstanding outside pressures and whatever you might have seen. Trinidad and Tobago and the government members in Trinidad and Tobago and myself and the Prime Minister of Jamaica, we maintain a very, very good relationship. The Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago, the Attorney General of Jamaica, their campus colleagues, and these things are worth something. So when I see the opposition leader going on a platform and once again threatening to disturb the equilibrium between the people of Jamaica and the people of Trinidad and Tobago, I want to call out the opposition leader and to ask her to leave Trinidad and Tobago people alone. The opposition leader went on a platform and made the most scurrilous attacks on Minister Stuart Young and his family, accusing them of corruption, accusing the cabinet of corruption, making all kinds of Nancy stories about a bank in Trinidad and Tobago lending money to the government of Trinidad and Tobago, identifying a Jamaican bank which is operating in Trinidad and Tobago, owned by Guardian Life or associated with Guardian Life, which is a regional business coming out of Trinidad and Tobago. And for some reason, this irresponsible opposition leader believed that they could fabricate stories and attack the bank, and that that would be an attack on the cabinet and on Stuart Young, not realizing that what she's doing is rekindling the kinds of hurt that existed when she was Prime Minister, and having me as Prime Minister having to explain to the Jamaicans whether in fact it is the policy in Trinidad and Tobago to treat Jamaica in a particular way. Our position in Trinidad and Tobago, where we led the charge on the CARICOM single market and economy, and you may recall, in the absence of the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago at a CARICOM meeting, the single market and economy was taken off the agenda at CARICOM. Trinidad and Tobago has a great interest in furthering the CSME. It was taken off the agenda and left off the agenda. At my first CARICOM meeting in Guyana, as Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, I raised it and had it put back on the agenda for the next meeting. That item didn't only go back on the agenda, but we had a special meeting here in Trinidad and Tobago where CARICOM made the step forward and signed off, all the CARICOM countries signed off on what is regarded as the St. Anne's Agreement. And we are currently struggling to operationalize the single market and economy. Prime Minister Motley of Barbados, her responsibility in the quasi-cabinet of CARICOM is to get this done, and she's working overtime in trying to remove the obstacles. And Jamaica is also there trying to work alongside an initiative which Trinidad and Tobago put back on the agenda. And it is quite surprising that a Trinidad and Tobago former Prime Minister, current opposition leader, aspirant to being Prime Minister, will make this irresponsible attack on a bank in Trinidad and Tobago, a bank that is operating in Trinidad and Tobago, on the basis that the bank may have won one or two bids and would have supplied in the borrowing profile of the government in Trinidad and Tobago. What are the facts? The facts are, in our national budget, we have a portion of the budget to be funded by borrowings, largely for the development program. And from time to time, in managing the government's cash flow and its expenditure patterns, the Ministry of Finance will do short-term borrowing. None of this is new. All of this is the normal operations of the Ministry of Finance. And what is the procedure? The Ministry of Finance will ask all the banks to offer, and the Ministry of Finance will determine who gets to provide the money based on what the banks offer, who offers the best terms on various kinds of tenors and so on, best tenor, best cost and so on. And all the banks are involved, and the borrowing is spread around. This opposition leader has decided, because an employee in NCB of Jamaica, an employee, not an owner, an employee in that bank, is a brother to a member of the cabinet. This irresponsible woman has decided to convert that into some aspect of corruption and come up with this fanciful story that Stuart Young and his brother and his father are enriching themselves by lending the government money. Well, I want to make a distinction between lending money and thieving money. The most that this government could be accused of is borrowing money from the bank to service the needs of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Other governments have been accused of thieving money, and there's a big difference there. And she's also wanting to know whether in this corrupt practice of this government, whether Minister Young declare his interest. Well, because Minister Young's brother works in that bank, and because he knows how they will behave, not being a beneficiary in any way, but to make sure that it is not portrayed in any similar way, I, as head of the cabinet, could tell the population of Trinidad and Tobago that on every occasion that bank is a bidder, whether they got the opportunity to supply or not, as long as they were taking part in the bidding process. When that matter comes to the cabinet, Minister Stuart Young recused himself and take no part in the proceedings, whether the bank got the money or didn't get the opportunity to provide the money. So Mrs. Prasad Bisesa could sleep well, and the rest of the country could sleep well knowing that in this government, being accused of borrowing money, if that is what we're being accused of, then we're guilty. But to say that that is wrongdoing and to portray it as corruption and to besmirch the bank's business in Trinidad and Tobago, I warn Mrs. Prasad Bisesa to not create an environment again where a Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago will have to go to Jamaica to throw water on situations that she would have created. If you have any questions, I would take them now.
Check. Prime Minister Anselm gives from TV6 News. I know you talked about a number of countries to be added to the travel restriction list regarding the coronavirus, COVID-19 situation. There have been a number of cases reported in a particular area of New York State. I believe it's Westchester County or somewhere around there. Will you be monitoring this, for instance, to look at if people traveling from, I don't know if it's in New York or the US, could possibly end up on that list?
We are monitoring the presence of the virus and its effect across the world. But in the case of the United States and the UK, the intensity is not as great as elsewhere. And it's not feasible to get much benefit out of going inside of a country to say, well, people from Westchester can't come to Trinidad, because in America, they're moving around freely from Westchester down to the Bronx or elsewhere. So we can't go and say, well, we're going to pick a point in the country. What we're going to do is monitor what's happening in the United States. And God forbid that we find ourselves in a situation where the U.S. condition is such that we will have to, it's not there at all that we have to close our arrangements with them, because the level of infection is not as great as it is in other places where the chances of being infected are greater. So we've put the other countries on where there's serious intensities and spread. I mean, you would have observed that the entire Italian nation has put itself under some element of quarantine. In Britain and the UK, where there are instances, and we would monitor those and trust that the containment and the delay factors that's taking place there, there would be a front line for us, and we would only come in when those front lines break down.
Prime Minister, good day. Welcome back from your trip.
Thank you very much.
Ghana, but I wanted to shift from Ghana to Guyana and get your thoughts on any sort of words of wisdom that you could offer the people there, given that so many other observers have been,
You're talking about the Guyanese elections?
Right.
I have been in constant communication with the chairman of CARICOM, Prime Minister Motley, and she has kept me abreast of all the facts of the situation as we know them, because there are a lot of other information. Some of it may not be facts. Some of it may simply be emotion from different quarters. So whatever you've seen coming out of CARICOM, from the CARICOM Secretariat, Trinidad and Tobago's position is inside of that. And we have been monitoring, and the Prime Minister of Barbados, as chairman of CARICOM, leading our presence in the situation, has been in constant communication with the various parties in Guyana. My understanding is that, and the CARICOM understanding, is that the process seems to have stalled somewhere before its completion. The whole issue seems to be around the completion of the process of the counting of votes and the certification of ballots from the elections. And then there was the anxiety of a declaration of who would have won before this process had been satisfactorily completed. Common sense will tell us, and that is what CARICOM has done, to call first and foremost for calm, for preservation of law and order in Guyana, because that is paramount. And in that, in anticipation of calm and a preservation of law and order, that the process which was embarked upon, which is an election, where votes are cast and votes have to be counted and certified by the competent authorities, and then a result will come. And we are simply demanding that the process be made to work without any interference and pollution of the independence of the structures that are in place to give the Guyanese a result from free and fair elections. And that's where we are at the moment.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. Crystal Wilson, TTT News. You've mentioned that the government is doing all that it can with regard to preventing the spread of the COVID-19 virus. Can you share with us if there's anything you've experienced based in terms of what you've traveled, you've returned, anything you've noted that we can do to improve on what we are currently doing at this time?
What we're doing, we are at the stage of trying to prevent the virus from entering. We have had no instance of it entering, so we are not responding to anything inside. We've put things in place, and we were very upfront with that. As a matter of fact, I was surprised to see the leader of a country yesterday, which had put in place what we had put in place weeks ago, which was that persons coming from a concerned source cannot enter the country under 14 days of having left that source. And the leader was saying, well, this is the first country to have done that. And I said, obviously, he hasn't heard about Trinidad and Tobago. Because when we did that, some persons who have interest to protect accused us of overreacting. But from up front, we have been trying to prevent or to lessen the possibility that the virus could easily enter our community, and that's where we're at. We need to preserve that arrangement for as long as possible, not make it easy for the virus to enter. And if by chance it enters, then our next is how do we treat with it? We had one person in Tobago who came from an area of concern, and that person was quarantined in Tobago. They had a bit of a scare when the person had a temperature spike. The person was tested and found not to be carrying the virus, and I'm informed that the person has been normalized and is back into the population. That was the only instance we had to deal with. All the rest that you would have heard about were just mischief making. As of now, we will continue to monitor. We will continue to try to make it difficult for the virus to enter our country. And there isn't much more we can do. And of course, the biological side of it, the virologists are telling us there's no treatment. It is spread by the behavior of people acting on themselves. So stay away from people who might be carrying the virus. Fortunately, in our country, we are saying there's nobody carrying it here. Wash your hands regularly, continuously. Do not shake hands. It is so difficult. I have come from a long trip, and you would not believe how difficult it is to carry that instruction of not shaking hands. And the only, even the king was having difficulty. He eventually had to say, well, for tonight we will shake hands because there's no virus here. But we came from a place where the virus had not been known to be present, which is the Southern Caribbean. And we went to Ghana, where the virus is not known to be present. But even so, the instruction is personal hygiene is very important in protecting yourself from transmission from one person to the other. So even though we don't have confirmed instances here, it would be good for us even now to pay attention to that aspect of personal hygiene, keep washing your hands continuously, And of course, keep your hands out of your mouth and your eyes and your nose, because that's where the infection takes place. In the event that there are asymptomatic people who are around transmitting the virus and even testing negative. So it's a behavioral thing, and so far for us, so good. But we don't know how long this would last, but we'll keep trying to prevent the virus from entering us by, I was just checked outside there, I was checked to make sure that my body temperature was not abnormal, which is a symptom of the virus. I'm glad to report that I am of normal temperature and I have no symptoms. So as far as we are able to determine that those of us who've traveled, we've all come back here without any concerns. So it's something that we have to live with going forward, but we have to be mindful of what's happening to other people, because it's having some serious consequences in other parts of the world.
Prime Minister Peter Christopher from Guardian Media, just going back to your talks with BP in London, given the changes that have happened due to the virus outbreak and the state of the economy in the United States, has any of the plans that you all discussed been altered or delayed as a result?
Well, today is Tuesday, right? And much of what has happened between Friday and Monday, that's when the bloodletting took place on the stock exchange, right? But we are hoping that the agreements that we had, even in this difficult situation, because the agreements are so useful to both sides, that even in the difficult situation that we would still be able to carry forward what we have agreed to do. These situations are usually oscillations. They go up, they go down. Question is how long they would last. And what we have to do is to make sure that we don't let the situation get the better of us, because there will be a tomorrow, and we want to make sure that when the tomorrow comes, that we would not have been unnecessarily hampered by today's circumstance. But I want to warn the population that these are serious complications. In the next few weeks, the Minister of Finance is going to be doing the budget review. We have to be responsible. We are not making up this situation. It's before our very eyes. When the Minister of Finance reports in a few weeks, he will have to take into account what the circumstances are. That is what a responsible government does. And if there are people who believe that this provides opportunity for them to mislead the country, create rah-rah, create bacchanal, let's hope that they are in the minority.
Dr. Rowley, Nika Pasanal from Loop TT. I just have one question on the coronavirus spread abroad. You mentioned earlier that we may see some lengthening of the list of countries that we are monitoring persons from. Are we prepared to state those new countries?
I thought I did. It's France, Germany, and Spain.
Thank you.
And if you look at the publications of the concentration of the virus outside of China, you will see the top 7 countries or so, or 8. We had mentioned some before. It was Iran, South Korea, Japan, and Singapore, and China, of course. Now, that was the top 5. And then these other 3 countries in the last week, the Italians have had a very bad experience going on in Italy right now, and France and Germany. The numbers are increasing there very rapidly. So we put them on the list for the kind of observation and treatment in our attempt to minimize the chances of the virus being transmitted to us. Okay, thank you all very much, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.